I want to bring in MS Now's Laura Barone-Lopez traveling with the president in Beijing. The New York Times' Michael Crowley covers the U.S. State Department and foreign policy. And Charlie Sykes is author of the Substack newsletter To the Contrary. So, Charlie, when you combine the president's remarks with the fact that he's on this trip with CEOs who are worth a combined $1 trillion plus by most estimates, is it sending the same message to the American people that he sent on Tuesday?
Well, the optics and the substance are suboptimal, aren't they? You had that split screen where Donald Trump surrounded himself with trillionaires the day after that he said that he did not really care about the financial situation of Americans. And by the way, you use the right term. What you're seeing back home is a lot of cleanup because Donald Trump said basically the quiet part out loud, perhaps inadvertently. He blurted out something that's true. And I think the reason why it's resonating and why it is sticking is because I think Americans are, watching what's happening to their own bottom lines and then watching a president who's more concerned about ballrooms and reflecting pools and kowtowing to the Chinese than he is in addressing their problems. So it is a difficult and awkward political moment, particularly for a president who has stressed how strong he is. He's looking awfully weakened in Beijing at the moment.
Yeah, and when you listen to exactly what we heard from both the vice president and the speaker, Charlie, the speaker saying, I don't know what context this was in, like 24 hours after he said it and after it had been so widely reported. I'll let you do with that what you will. But to be fair, is there any amount of spin that can fix this for the president?
Well, the spin that will fix it is the news cycle that Donald Trump will hope that we will simply forget it as we have forgotten so many other things. On the other hand, the financial condition of Americans is getting worse. We are seeing, in fact, more and more what he's focused on, virtually everything other than policies that would affect the middle class. So, again, we've seen, again and again how things will, dominate the news cycle for 24 hours, and then we are distracted from it or it is simply forgotten. This feels like it might have a longer tail than Donald Trump would like.
So let me ask you, Michael, we know these CEOs obviously are there for a reason. They're hoping that they are able to bring something tangible home. And in fact, the president is hoping to have something economic and tangible to bring home as well. But it leads to the question for the American people who have been pleading for help since this war started. What might they get out of this?
Yeah, Chris, thanks. I think the agenda here is unclear for most Americans when you consider it from the perspective of, how does this translate into day-to-day benefit? That's not to say that it's not incredibly important for the American president to be talking to the Chinese president about all kinds of issues, many of which are maybe pretty abstract for ordinary Americans, including making sure that there are no misunderstandings over Taiwan, the future of artificial intelligence, and esoteric economic issues. But what you don't have is the kind of thing that President Trump had in his first term, which was a very showy trade deal where the president was able to kind of boast that he was going to be taking dramatic steps to cut our trade deficit with China and to get cheaper imported goods and to stop China from, as he said, cheating on its economic obligations. I don't think you really have a very concrete message from the White House along those lines right now. This is more kind of generalized international diplomacy. And the big issues here really that I've seen dominating the headlines have been Taiwan, particularly after the Chinese leader made some pretty stern remarks on that subject about how it brought the risk of conflict between the countries. And then, of course, obviously the war in Iran and President Trump trying to get China's help, even though he says he doesn't need it, in getting the Strait of Hormuz open. So as far as messaging from this trip that will help the White House with any problems it might have from regular Americans about kitchen table issues, their economic concerns, inflation, et cetera, I don't really see it.
Yeah, that's the problem, right, Laura, facing this White House. Are you hearing concern that the president's comments combined with the bad inflation numbers we got on Wednesday actually end up overshadowing this summit?
Well, the White House is very aware of those bad polls, of the response back home, Chris. But the president came here trying to get a win, trying to get deals, and with a focus on the economic relationship with China rather than confronting China as a geopolitical rival. And here, just take a listen to how President Trump described and toasted his relationship with the Chinese autocratic leader Xi Jinping at the end of the first day of this summit. Take a listen.
The American and Chinese people share much in common. We value hard work. We value courage and achievement. We love our families and we love our countries. Together, we have the chance to draw on these values to create a future of greater prosperity, cooperation, and happiness, and peace for our children. We love our children. This region and the world, it's a special world with the two of us united and together.
So despite those bad polls back home and the fact that American voters are not happy with the direction of the Iran war, the president hasn't really changed any of his tone or his argument about why he's here in China. And despite those fond words, Chris, the president doesn't have a concrete deal when it comes to the biggest single issue that could potentially help him with Americans back home, and that's ending the Iran war and the impact that it's had on disrupting gas prices and the global oil market. And that's because so far, at the end of this first day and going into the second day of this summit, China has not committed or agreed to any concrete steps saying that they would help the president with getting Iran to the negotiating table or with reopening the Strait of Hormuz. So that's arguably what would help the president the most if he were able to come home with something on that front, Chris.
So, Michael, I find it interesting. Look, let's just start with the fact that it's not unusual necessarily for a president of the United States to bring business leaders with him on a foreign trip. Elon Musk is a very interesting character, because he frankly ticked off so many Americans with this Doge business, right? And in many areas decimated the U.S. government and foreign aid. But as the New York Times points out, he is being brought nearly a year after his pugnacious exit from the White House as an ambassador for American business in China. Can he be that?
Elon Musk is such a complicated figure, Chris. As you noted, I just yesterday was behind a Tesla in a parking lot with one of those stickers with a red circle and a slash over his name, a Tesla owner who wanted people to know that they did not support Musk and maybe bought the car before Musk got involved in politics in a way that upset so many people. And look, is Musk someone that we generally consider as having a diplomatic ambassadorial touch? No. Is he a very major and influential American businessman? Yes. There are arguments why it would make a lot of sense for him to be over there. The Chinese electric car market is massive. It also presents a lot of competition to Tesla, so he has major interest there. But, I just think in general, again, back to this issue of how are regular Americans perceiving this, it was interesting to me to see just kind of the chumminess the president had with these CEOs, including Musk. There was a photograph where they were all seated together on Air Force One, and they had this big spread of, I think it was Panda Express, laid out in front of them, and Trump had this big grin. It kind of looked like the rich and powerful of the world yucking it up. Now, that may happen behind the scenes in lots of presidencies, but I think Trump has been more overt and open about it, and Musk sort of symbolizes that more than anything else. So, I think that does bring potential political risk to the president and Republicans.
So there's a couple of lanes here that obviously, Michael, we've already talked about the economic one, but there is also just the war in Iran. And we just have some breaking news because the president gave an interview to Sean Hannity of Fox News, and he said that Xi Jinping has committed to withholding military equipment from Iran following their high-level discussions. What could that mean?
Well, that's pretty interesting. I guess the devil will be in the details. You know, clearly, she wants to have a good summit. He wants to have a good relationship with Trump. There were going to have to be some things out of this summit that she would have to give Trump to, let him leave in a good mood and not go off on him on Truth Social. But there are lots of ways that China could support Iran or not help the U.S. In its struggle against Iran right now. And, you can provide technology, you can provide all kinds of economic and technological support. And even if you say you're going to stop shipping weapons or, military capable supplies, well, what happens in 2 weeks and a month? So, it's interesting, but I don't know how meaningful it really is. And my first reaction is, okay, I would have expected some gestures like this, but I want to see how it plays out and what it really means.